This is The World This Weekend. Good evening, I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Tonight, more communities prepare to evacuate because of out-of-control wildfires in Alberta.
We remain in an extremely volatile situation, and the risk of new wildfires remains significant in much of the province.
Also tonight, bracing for impact. Bangladesh and Myanmar prepare for an intense cyclone with a refugee camp right in its path.
The storm surge is forecast to have a height of about 2 to 2.5 metres above the normal astronomical tide level.
And the WNBA plays in Canada for the first time ever, and fans hope it won't be the last.
It's a great chance for kids to see women play on a court. Women can do the same things that men can do on the exact same stage that we see the Toronto Raptors play.
That's later, but first. We begin tonight in Alberta, where a bad situation could get worse. There are more than 80 wildfires burning, with more than 20 currently out of control. And unseasonably hot weather is increasing the risk of new fires. Earlier today, the CBC's Emily Fitzpatrick got a look at some of the devastation from a helicopter. She gives us a bird's eye view.
I'm 3,000 feet above Grande Prairie County, just one of the many areas in Alberta battling wildfires right now. This week, Premier Danielle Smith took the same tour and called it sobering. Much of the damage is around the communities that border Sturgeon Lake area. There are huge areas of farmland and fields that are black and orange, and smoke is still wafting up. Retardant lines are going right across Highway 43. The flames moved right to the edge of the lake, destroying anything in their way. A lot of the damage was to Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. They say they lost more than 40 structures, and you can see what remains from the air. The fire started on Thursday, and crews managed to get it under control, but more than 1,600 people were evacuated. Now the concern is around the weather. Northern Alberta has not received much in terms of rain, and the forecast is calling for hot temperatures all weekend. Despite the damage here, there's still a lot of fuel left to burn. On Friday, Alberta Wildlife said they were ready for it, calling in resources and crews from across the province. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Grande Prairie County.
The hot, dry weather across Alberta and BC is expected to continue through this weekend. Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologist Rob Griffith explains what to expect over the next few days.
We are looking at maybe setting some daily records in a few locations, particularly through northern Alberta on Sunday and Monday. Afterwards, we may get a cold front going through the province, which will bring a little bit more moderate temperatures on Tuesday and Wednesday. Unfortunately, with that cold front, there's the possibility of thunderstorms, so that could be a bad thing for the fire situation as well.
Canadian troops have been deployed to Alberta to boost firefighting efforts. Major Matt Prowse with the Canadian Armed Forces gave an update on their mission this morning.
We have been equipped through the Alberta Wildfire team with water packs and specialized tools to properly clear debris, turn over earth, douse hot spots, and prevent flare-ups, particularly for next week when the temperatures are going to increase higher than 30 degrees Celsius.
Many of the soldiers will be heading north to the fire-ravaged Fox Lake. That community has already lost more than 100 structures consumed by the out-of-control fire. Fox Lake is part of the Little Red River Cree Nation. Now another community in that First Nation, Garden River, is preparing for an evacuation, and other communities are preparing to take people in. We spoke to CBC's Katie Nicholson about that a little earlier. So, Katie, you're in the community of John Doerr. Can you tell us what's happening where you are now?
Right now, there's a massive effort to put up housing for evacuees within the First Nation. So you remember that Fox Lake was evacuated last week, Stephanie. That community is really accessible only by barge in the summer. Now the First Nation's moving vulnerable people out of Garden River. That's a community to the northeast of John Doerr, but part of the First Nation. So this morning, Chief and Council identified a trigger point for the Pasqua fire. They said that as soon as it got to that point, they would evacuate Garden River, and it's been moving fast toward that trigger point. And really what this community is trying to do is retain as many evacuees here within the First Nation where they're going to be close to home and their culture. We got a tour of the preparations from Daryl Salwin. He's with the First Nations Emergency Management Team.
Well, the importance is that they're close to the community, right? And that's what everybody wants, is to remain close to here. And I'm sure you have some people that would rather remain outside given the situation right now, but the great majority want to be close to the community and what's going on in their families and friends.
Well, and speaking of the community and the families and friends who are there, Katie, how are people coping?
Well, really terrible air quality here, fine particulate matter, bits of ash kind of on top of people's cars, that sort of thing. And it's just, in general, been tough for evacuees. The uncertainty, the loss, feeling displaced, that thick, heavy smoke here, a reminder of that ever-present danger. And for elders, you know, what they're trying to do here in the community is get them traditional foods that they would eat. In fact, there was a moose hunt organized to make sure that they would be able to keep the elders on the diet that they're used to while they're here. Fox Lake is more remote. Its people speak Cree, and as one member of John Doerr put it, it's thicker Cree. So one community member here in John Doerr told me that there's a silver lining, that the communities are being brought closer together, and maybe some of the traditional language will be shared with the younger generations here in John Doerr. And, you know, it's one of these threads that we often find in a natural disaster. You have fear and loss and sorrow, but there's also an incredible tale of people just coming together and supporting one another. And here there's an opportunity for some cultural reclamation as well.
All right, Katie Nicholson in John Doerr, Alberta. Thank you so much, Katie.
You're welcome.
In Ottawa, the Ontario Provincial Police have led a procession to bring the body of Sergeant Eric Mueller back home. The OPP officer died Thursday after he was shot while responding to a call at a home in Bourget, just east of Ottawa. 2 other officers were also injured. Police say they have charged a 39-year-old man with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. A police funeral for Sergeant Mueller will be held at the Canadian Tire Centre in Ottawa on May 18th. In Saint-Urbain, Quebec today, a private funeral was held for Régis Lavoie. He is one of 2 firefighters killed by flash flooding on May 1st. Régis Lavoie and Christopher Lavoie, no relation, were both swept away by floodwaters during a rescue mission in the community, which is northeast of Quebec City. Their bodies were found 2 days later. A funeral service for Christopher Lavoie will be held on May 26th. Ukraine says it has retaken some territory around Bakhmut. After months of trying to capture the eastern Ukrainian city, Russia acknowledged Friday its troops have retreated to defensive positions to the city's north. But Ukraine's deputy defense minister says the situation in the city center is still very complicated. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was in Rome today. He met with Pope Francis as well as the Italian president and prime minister. The meeting comes weeks after the Pope said the Vatican was involved in a peace plan between Ukraine and Russia. Megan Williams has more.
A tired-looking Volodymyr Zelenskyy shook hands with Pope Francis after the 2 exchanged gifts. The Pope giving the Ukrainian president a bronze sculpture of an olive branch. Ukraine's gift to the Pope was a hard-hitting relic from a country under attack. Art made out of a bulletproof vest with a Christian icon painted where it was torn apart by a projectile. The 2 leaders met for 40 minutes. The Pope told Zelenskyy he is constantly praying for peace and spoke of the urgent need to help the most fragile people, innocent victims of the full-scale invasion launched by Russia last year. Pope Francis has often said that the Vatican is willing to act as a mediator between Russia and Ukraine, and a few weeks ago said the Vatican is working on a peace plan that he couldn't yet discuss. He has said he would not exclude Russia from talks. After the meeting today, Zelenskyy appeared on a popular Italian talk show where he sat atop the famed monument to the homeland. With Rome spread out behind him, he made it clear that any direct talks with Russia were out of the question. We don't need mediation between Ukraine and the aggressor, he said. We need the world to get behind our peace plan. Earlier today, Zelenskyy met with Italy's president and its prime minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Di una brutale e ingiusta aggressione da parte della Federazione Russa.
She condemned Russia's brutal and unjust aggression and pledged support for Ukraine for as long as necessary. Meloni also reiterated her backing of Ukraine's bid to join the European Union. President Zelenskyy will next travel to Berlin. He's due to arrive there by Sunday. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
A cyclone with winds of at least 240 kilometers per hour is expected to hit mainland in Bangladesh and Myanmar tomorrow. The storm could possibly put millions of people in danger. Right in the middle of it all is the world's largest refugee camp. Sam Sampson explains what the fallout could entail.
A man in a red jumpsuit shouts from a megaphone. He's on the back of a moped, slowly winding through a cramped refugee camp in southern Bangladesh. He warns of what's to come. Danger and inevitable destruction barreling towards millions of vulnerable people. A ruthless storm has brewed for days in the Bay of Bengal. Meteorologists call it Cyclone Mocha. Claire Nullis and the World Meteorological Organization predict it will make landfall tomorrow.
The storm surge is forecast to have a height of about 2 to 2.5 meters above the normal astronomical tide level.
Directly in the line of fire is the world's largest refugee camp. Cox's Bazar is home to nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees who fled what the United Nations calls a genocide about 6 years ago. But Bangladeshi authorities banned the Rohingya from building concrete homes to make sure they don't stay there. That means flimsy shelters of bamboo and tarps won't be any match for what's to come. As much as I can, I'll try to keep my children safe with all I have, one refugee says. There is no tarpaulin, there's no rope. If the storm takes everything away, we will try to recollect them and we'll stay under these. Bangladesh has set up more than 1,500 cyclone shelters for residents. Refugees are in a different situation. They're not allowed to leave their camps. Bangladesh officials say they're making sure the camps are as safe as possible, and it's not easy to relocate so many people. Saifullah Mohammed is with the Rohingya Center of Canada. He has family and friends in refugee camps where the storm is expected to hit.
Refugees need to accept whatever happened to them because there is no any cyclone centers. Still, the refugees are in fear of landslidings, and if it hurts, there's no way to go.
Meaning hundreds of thousands of people who were forced to flee here for their lives are now forced to do nothing but wait out the storm and hope to survive. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Toronto.
The Syrian government has agreed to keep 2 of its border crossings with Turkey open for United Nations aid workers. The crossings will be open for the next 3 months to allow post-earthquake aid to flow into Idlib province. More than 50,000 people died in an earthquake in the region last February. At least 6,000 of those deaths were in Syria. You're listening to The World This Weekend on CBC Radio. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Toronto is hosting the Women's National Basketball Association's first ever game in Canada today, with the Chicago Sky and Minnesota Lynx battling it out in an exhibition match. It could be a sign of an exciting new chapter in women's basketball, and possibly even a WNBA franchise taking root north of the border. Philip Lishanok reports.
Bridget Carleton with a nice move.
For the first time in her professional career, Bridget Carleton is playing on home soil. And in the stands at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, she says there were plenty of familiar faces.
Family and friends who haven't seen me play in a long time because obviously there's nowhere for us to play in Canada.
The 25-year-old Chatham, Ontario native plays for the Minnesota Lynx. The 6'1" forward took to the hard court against the Chicago Sky in the first WNBA game ever played in Canada.
You know, women can do the same things that men can do on the exact same stage that we see the Toronto Raptors play.
Leah McNabb is the managing director of the NBA in Canada. She says the league sees strong support for women's basketball in the city. Almost 20,000 tickets sold out in minutes.
I know there were folks in the market that were surprised, but we certainly were not.
The league sees this exhibition game as a test. After 26 years, there are plans to expand the league beyond a dozen teams, and Toronto is among 10 cities in the running and could land the first WNBA franchise north of the border.
My hope is that it happens very soon.
Michaela Richey is director of basketball operations at Layup Youth Basketball. She's played pro ball and says having a team here would have a big impact on youth sports at the grassroots level.
The market is here for it, the appetite is here for it, and Toronto's ready for a WNBA team.
Richey says that would give girls something to aim for, landing jobs and careers related to basketball. For 13-year-old Angelina Matevsky, it would be great to have a Canadian WNBA team to root for.
That'd be so sick. That'd be my number one team. I get all the merch. I'll hype it. I'll go to every game.
And with a professional league to shoot for, would mean a female athlete's career would not end at the college level or with the Olympics. Philip Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, for more on the future of the WNBA in Canada, I spoke to Ellen Hislop. She's the co-founder of The Gist, a women-run sports media outlet, and she spoke to us a little earlier. So, Ellen, tickets for this game sold out the day they became available. What does that tell us about the hunger that's there for the WNBA in Canada?
Oh my gosh, there was just so much pent-up demand from the Canadian market and from the GTA and folks flying in for the game as well. I think really Canada is a hotbed for basketball and basketball talent. Brands know it, fans know it, and we were just so excited to finally get women's professional basketball on our soil to watch it in person.
From what I understand, the WNBA hasn't played outside the U.S. since a game that they played in the U.K. in 2011. So it's been a long time. What does it mean that they chose to do this in Toronto? What does that kind of symbolize?
Yes, so I was at the ESPN W Summit Canada yesterday afternoon, and in the afternoon, Kathy Engelbert, who's the W commissioner, joined the summit. And essentially what she said is that the WNBA is looking to expand, which is definitely necessary because there's so much talent and so much fandom and people want to be supporting and playing in the league. And essentially the WNBA has narrowed down their picks to about 10 to 20 cities, and within those 10 to 20 cities is Toronto. And so this WNBA Canada game is essentially somewhat of a test to see what the Canadian market is like, and I think that she is very impressed by the energy that Canada has brought to this game.
One of the big issues for players in the WNBA, like it is in other sports, is pay equality between the men and the women. And there's actually a new mascot to represent this for the WNBA this year called Allie Hoop. She looks like this green and orange equal sign. And she was created because of this pretty shocking statistic that I read, that the mascot for the NBA's Denver Nuggets, the mascot, is paid 3 times more than the highest paid WNBA player. I think that gives us a pretty good indication of the severity of the pay gap here, but can you help explain it to us a little more? What are the women of the WNBA up against when it comes to pay? And are there any signs that'll improve?
Yeah, that mascot set is really ridiculous, and it just fires you right up. I think
Totally.
you know the NBA has been around for, I think, going on 77 years at this point. The WNBA is headed into its 26th year, if I'm doing my math correctly. So it's really hard to compare the two, right? And when you think about the WNBA and the traction it's had lately, it's essentially still a startup. There's 2 different things, though, I think, when it comes to pay equity that we really need to keep in mind. The first is revenue sharing. The WNBA does not have the same agreement with their players in terms of revenue share across the board for a number of different things. And the second is outside of the WNBA, from corporate partners, from investors, etc. So oftentimes women have to have proven that they already have traction versus men need to just prove that they have potential. And I think that's where things really get frustrating, is that this ecosystem is willing to bet on men, but they're not willing to bet on women. And then that makes it so hard for the leagues, teams, and then players to thrive in the same way that the men could when they first started.
Are you seeing any signs of that changing?
I think so. I think things are really starting to change. The Canadian corporate partners around this WNBA event have totally stepped up, like Canadian Tire and Tangerine and DoorDash around the WNBA event. It just feels like these companies are ready to hop on the growth train that is inevitably women's sports and women in sports.
All right. And you traveled to Toronto for today's game, like so many people did. We know Toronto is mad for basketball. What is the atmosphere like around this, and how excited are people, and what do you think this means for the future of women's basketball in Toronto and Canada?
Oh, it's incredible, the energy. You could feel it already. Yesterday, I am in and around Maple Leaf Square right now, and it is palpable. And I think the coolest thing is that there's such a wide range of people that are attending today and are going to be able to watch this amazing product. The energy is incredible, and the more and more people in powerful positions that see the sold out arena, that see how excited people are, the more likely that they're going to invest in the sport, invest in the players. And that's exactly what we need in order to have a W expansion team come to Toronto by 2025 or 2026.
All right, an exciting day for sure. Ellen, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Ellen Hislop is co-founder of The Gist. So yes, an exciting time for basketball fans, but Toronto hockey fans are licking their wounds after a devastating overtime loss to the Florida Panthers last night that knocked the Leafs out of the playoffs. But deep in the heart of Leafs country, the community of Six Nations of the Grand River is celebrating a victory for a hometown hero. Brandon Montour, reporter Aisha Smith-Belgaba takes us to the party.
What kind of jersey is this?
The Panthers.
That's 6-year-old Xavier Williams from Six Nations of the Grand River. He might be one of the youngest fans of Brandon Montour, the NHL defenseman who became a star player for the Florida Panthers. Xavier's catching Game 3 in the Panthers series against the Toronto Maple Leafs at a watch party on Six Nations. It's the most populous First Nation in Canada, about 100 kilometers southwest of Toronto, where Montour partly grew up. Ariwaios Martin, who organized the party, said loyalties here have been divided this series.
My whole family is Leafs fans. Panthers, for me, is important because Brandon's on there, number 62. I met him once, and he's a really cool dude. I think when anyone of us is on that kind of level, that national stage, all of us should be supporting that, you know?
Montour's star has been rising since he was drafted into the NHL by the Anaheim Ducks in 2014. The 29-year-old, who was born in nearby Brantford, played with the Ducks for nearly 3 seasons before being traded to Buffalo in 2019. He joined Florida in 2021.
Long shot block. Montour scores! Brandon Montour with 59.3 seconds remaining.
In a game against the Boston Bruins on April 30th, with 1 minute left in the third period, Montour scored, tying the game and helping to send the Panthers on to the next round. The goal caught the attention of many.
On the short side, the very spot he's been scoring throughout the series.
A week later, Asenagwas Jacobs brought her son Jamie out to watch Montour play. Like little Xavier, he's only 6.
My little guy just started ice skating, so he's really into hockey. And then we told him that there was an Ongwe Howe guy playing, and he was so pumped. He doesn't really know who he is, but he's really excited that it's someone who we know that's from here.
Montour's aunt, Jamie Lynn Montour, says the interest in her nephew this past week has felt like a big moment.
And then you hear from people across the nation, across Turtle Island, and they know your name. To see your last name in the lights like that, you know for a fact the ancestors, they're so proud.
Jamie Lynn says Montour had great potential his whole life and was always a great hockey and lacrosse player. She credits her family, including her parents and her brother, for supporting him.
I can't limit it to how it actually feels with one word. It is this overall just complete joy that this person who I'm connected with has truly found his purpose and can truly excel and bring awareness for Indigenous communities, Indigenous children, give hope where fear once limited us from being able to step outside that comfort.
Aisha Smith-Belgaba, CBC News, Six Nations of the Grand River.
It's hard enough navigating the tricky world of online misinformation if you're an adult, but it's even harder when you're young. Now, CBC Kids News has created a resource for tweens to try and tackle the problem. Teachers of grades 4 to 8 can use it to educate and spark conversation among their students. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has that story.
This video game has everything that makes Minecraft so popular: adventures, avatars, and fun building projects. But the purpose of the game, created by CBC Kids News for use in classrooms, is as much education as entertainment.
And here I am.
14-year-old Ainara Alain, student and teen reporter for CBC Kids News, shows us how the game works.
You are a kids news journalist, and you get to go on this journey to find out who created this rumor that summer vacation is canceled. So that you have to go find your sources, you have to write your own story, take pictures.
The point of the game? To teach kids about misinformation running rampant on social media sites. It ranges from celebrity gossip to wrong or even harmful information about health, climate change, and political events. Cara Brisson-Boyven is the director of research for media literacy organization Media Smarts. She says more transparency and monitoring on platforms like TikTok would be very helpful.
Young people want to be in this space. They like the vibe. They don't want to have to completely, leave it, but they were, wanting, more flags, more opportunities within the space to verify within that immersive experience.
She also says you can't start conversations too young. She's even had them with her 6-year-old.
We talk quite frequently, about the kinds of content we're seeing online, what is real and what is imagined, how we can know these things.
Tom Little, father of 3 young men, one in his 20s and 18-year-old twins, agrees. He says the pandemic specifically led to teens spending too much time in virtual settings, which led to them having greater trust in the information they find there, legitimate or not.
I think it's more up to the parents than anybody else to kind of understand that the pitfalls and dangers of being connected all the time and that disinformation. I'm not judging the parent anyway, because I did it, right? I allowed my kids to do it, but I think that was the wrong thing to do.
He still has discussion with his teenage twins about what they're encountering online.
My initial fear was with them that they're going to end up actually hurting themselves when they go to the gym and they're watching a TikTok video or an Instagram post or a YouTube video about someone doing a particular exercise in the gym that is completely wrong.
And Arjun Ram, another young reporter for CBC Kids News, has some good teen-to-teen advice for his peers.
Patience is required when you're trying to really put in all your expertise into something. And if you're really passionate about a certain subject, it's really important that you understand where your sources are coming from.
As they navigate the tangled world of online information that's no child's play at all. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky.
Hard to believe it's been 10 years since this song swept radio stations everywhere. Daft Punk's Get Lucky. The mega hit is from the album Random Access Memories, the last for the long-running, robot-helmeted French duo until now. On its 10th anniversary, the album's being re-released along with 35 minutes of previously unheard material, including this.
On a simpler day, it's not right, it's not true.
Infinity Repeating was recorded in 2013 with vocals by the Strokes frontman Julian Casablancas, who also sang Instant Crush on Random Access Memories. In a new video, Casablancas looks back on that song and why he didn't think he was a sure bet.
I just thought because they work with all these huge name people, because I was like, maybe Stevie Wonder wants to sing the song, I thought that'd be cool. And they were just like, no, you do it.
Daft Punk's Thomas Bangalter and Guy-Manuel de Homem Christo gave few interviews. But Bangalter recently told the BBC that disbanding was the right choice. He spoke about his concerns about the rise of AI and said as much as he loved the robot characters, quote, the last thing I would want to be in the world we live in 2023 is a robot, end quote. Casablancas sees it a little differently.
They could put on those helmets at any time. They could be 80 years old and be like, all right, let's do it, man. And then get out there. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, I knew it.
So while we wait for that, here's a little more of Infinity Repeating, Daft Punk's final song. Probably. You've been listening to The World This Weekend. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Good night.
He knows it.